What's up, everyone? So I'm here with Joyce, and I wanted to take the opportunity to interview Joyce today because, to be totally honest, she has such a great channel going on that I want to invite all of you, those of you who are especially interested in my typology videos and everything, to go and check out. I've actually collaborated with Joyce on one video. We're going on a second video soon, and who knows how many more. And that was actually one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. Like, seriously. I said a lot of things that I don't often feel like people would understand, or if they did understand it, then they'd get afraid or something. Because we always fear people who have like power or whatever. But yeah, anyway, like I think that was like such a great space that Joyce is able to create, and she often does in her interviews. And pretty much, seriously, guys, I want y'all to, like, as we get to know Joyce throughout this interview right now, I want y'all to know that on her page, I don't like to boost too many people, because I'm always like, I'm just like a strong fact checker. I'm strong about, like, I don't want people to be misled and everything. But Joyce is on top of it. Like, we'll have conversations, and it's just like she's so pointed toward accuracy. She's so pointed toward, okay, what are the nuances of all of this? Like, and she's so open to being wrong about things. And I trust people like that so dearly. Like Joyce, if she thought somebody may have been this type or whatever, and then we would discuss or something, and then she could like see it this way, and she knows that I'm also open to it. And we both actually we're both classmates in Personality Hackers Profiler training. And so that's also cool because we're coming from like the same school of thought. We're calibrating in the same way. And Joyce, kind of like what I was doing with my deep dive interviews, which I'm still planning on doing as well. Joyce is deep dive interviewing people, not only of these different types and everything, but she's also having them like go into like specific functions, like, oh, the tertiary FI of an INTJ, not just one INTJ, but two INTJs, so that we can see this. Or like, let's compare these two types. Or like, how does this function look like in this specific type? And then maybe you might even go into like, gender, like all of these different nuances of how each type comes out, and asking them straightforward and creating that space for them to be able to like just express themselves. And so that's my brag on Joyce. And now I'd actually like for you to, introduce yourself, anything that I may have missed. Oh, and by the way, she's an INFJ.
Oh, that was such a nice intro, Denzel. I teared up a bit, so thank you for that. Yeah, if you guys are interested in Denzel's content, which of course you are if you're viewing this video, like, you can check out our video together, Metacognition and NI. He explains some really good thoughts on how like NI sees the seats in things. And so if you want to get to know Denzel better, you can totally check that out. Yeah. But basically, I guess I'm the host of Type Talks. It's a series I made where I invite guests on to talk about the Jungian cognitive functions with me. And I really value accuracy. So I try to explain their thought process to the audience too, and what I learned from it. So it's like I listen to them as you listen to them, and I try to get gold nuggets from it, and then I try to tell you about it because everyone could benefit from gold nuggets. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Denzel will be featured more on my channel too in the future, so check out for that as well.
Yeah, guys, and I think that Joyce, like seriously, that's something. Again, like that's one of the biggest things I value about your channel, because everybody can hop onto YouTube and start like, oh, this is my experience with like type, and I'm this, I'm that. But the fact that you fact check so much, and like you have such a rigorous vetting process. Like, guys, I'm telling you, like Joyce is so polite, she's so sweet. We met in person. We had like a whole 5-day event together and everything. And so like I see her demeanor in real life and everything, but don't sleep on the TI. Don't sleep on the TI. Like, she really is vigorous in like how she profiles, in the way that she's able to like understand people's minds. all of that. And so whenever I see her posting something, there could be like people, like, I'll be honest, like, where they'll like post something like, oh, this is the person's type, or like, this is what I think, or whatever. And I can watch it. And it's not that I'm like outrightly saying, nah, that's wrong, but I'm just like, like, I can never really be certain of their information. But Joyce is someone who, like, time and time again, I've been like, again, following her page, been watching her videos, and I've been seeing her on even Twitter, which, by the way, you guys should follow her on Twitter. I'm gonna put the handle in the description and everything. But like, I've been seeing like the stuff that she'll post on Twitter. I'll see the stuff that we're in a group chat together with our classmates from Personality Hacker and everything. The stuff that the questions that she'll ask in there. It's like she has all of her NIFETISE like focused to understanding everything about type, which ultimately is understanding everything she can about people. And then when she presents this information, it's not coming from an egotistical place. It's not coming from a place where it's like, well, I know best. But it's like, hey, I want to present this information to you guys so we can all better understand each other. So if you have an ENFP sexual 4 in your life, maybe this might help you understand this person a little bit more. Like, oh, if you are afraid of NJs who are using like metacognition in this kind of way, like, here are some NJs that I trust, and yada, 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 And so Joyce is so good at being able to create that space for people to be able to just speak honestly and share their information. And then Joyce, one thing that she also does a lot that I really love is that she'll repeat what they're saying. Like, she's like, okay, so if I'm like hearing you correctly, you're pretty much doing this, you're doing that, and yada, yada, yada. And then if she got it on point, then they're like, yeah, that's exactly it. Or if she's like missing something or maybe like misunderstood something, they'll like calibrate it. And then Joyce is like, okay, got you. So just like she said, it's kind of like a museum exhibit of some sort where she's showing the type and she's like demonstrating like, this is how it operates and everything. And so again, I feel like it's a really good way to be able to understand type in a real life aspect, because you're now seeing real people being demonstrated, and you're seeing like, okay, these are not only just like one INTJ, but there's two, maybe even three, and you can see how they're similar, you can see how they're different, but yet at the same time they share these functions. This is how this function comes out with this individual, yada, yada, yada. And Joyce, like, again, I'm just really so appreciative of your channel because of that accuracy and me being able to like watch your stuff and like have confidence, like, okay, I actually trust Joyce's process. I actually trust that, she does things in a very orderly way. So I think, well, do you have any comments on that before I ask my question to you?
I loved how you called it the museum exhibit of type. It really is. If you want to see museum in type form, you can visit my channel.
Yeah.
And Denzel is one of the ENFJ exhibits. Yeah, so I really prize intellectual honesty and radical intellectual like fact checking, because like I really care about type, and you'll see that in how I try to describe type. And even like I don't like to put words in people's mouths, and like a certain insecurity I have is like I'm scared to speak on behalf of someone and for them to not resonate with it. So it's like, what if I say something about ENFPs, and if I asked a real ENFP, they would identify with this part, but they wouldn't identify with this part. And so I'm kind of cutting the accuracy of their experience short. And so what this channel helps me do is I can calibrate the hypotheses I already have with people of actually of that type.
I fully resonate with that. I think that literally on my channel, and even the reason why I haven't been doing the deep dive interviews as much recently is because I was originally trying to do them with only people in like person. And so I had like, like I have a whole bunch of people that I could do it with like overseas or whatever. But I was like, I'm trying to have them in person so that, it just might be a different energy. But from watching like your videos and stuff like that, and just seeing how like, I've really like went down in the deep dive interviews, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to start just having them. Like, it's all right to like, do it over Zoom or something like that. It is what it is. I'll still be able to like present the information, and it's better than just waiting until I run into someone who will actually even have the time. to like sit down with me in person or fly down here or whatever it might be. But yeah, that's one thing that it's been like for me as well. Like, I know too many people who only go off of what they read online. And then it's like, again, like, and sorry, not sorry for, those of you who like may have commented something like this on my channel. But like, I've had people like literally tell me like, oh, well, that person that you're saying can't be ENFJ because they're not pushy. And I'm like, do you think that I'm pushy? And then literally like a response is like, well, if you're an ENFJ, you should be. And it's like, okay, like, like type is meant to be, it's meant to explain people, not like we're supposed to like calibrate our view of type based off of the people. Now, of course, there's a balance that has to come with that. Like if someone's an ENFP, like there's a lot of ENFPs, believe it or not, who believe that they're INFJ, which makes sense because they both lead with intuition. They have auxiliary feeling. They have tertiary thinking, and then they have inferior sensing. And so sometimes it gets a little bit like mixed up, even though they're totally opposite functions. But if someone's an ENFP and then they're trying to recalibrate all of what INFJ means, then of course, you don't try to like now recalibrate like, okay, well, INFJ doesn't actually mean this. It means whatever this ENFP is saying. You have to look at the consensus of the pool and be like, okay, this is what this ENFP is saying. Like, this is what this person is saying. And you might even find out like, oh, wait, actually, I think what you're saying sounds more like extrovert intuition. And you'll see enough. It won't just be one thing that the person's saying. It's like, no, you're an ENFP. You're not an INFJ. But you'll see enough to be like, I actually think the reason why you're trying to change so much of these INFJ stereotypes is because you're actually not one, But again, at the same time, like there's a balance. You have to be able to look at what the online descriptions are saying about certain types, and then look at the pool of people that you're looking for. Leave room for nuance of people. And at the end of the day, what it always comes down to is the functions. It doesn't matter if somebody's more boisterous or more reserved. Are they leading with FE? Or do they have inferior SE? If they don't have inferior SE, they're not an INJ. Like, period. What does inferior SE mean? Well, try to figure that out. If you don't have inferior SE, then you're not INJ. You can be as quiet as whatever. You can be as loud as whatever. But if you don't have inferior SE, you're not an INJ. If you don't have inferior SI, you're not an ENP. Like, that's how it works. And so I think that's, again, like all that to say that I really like that Joyce is able to present that nuance, and she's able to showcase a lot of people of different types and everything and ask them the questions necessary. And she's learning from them as we also watch, and we're continuing to learn. And she's been premiering her videos. So now you can sit down and we can all discuss in the chat. And, it's an open space. It's like, oh, wow, I always thought the ENTJs were like this and that and that, but this one doesn't really seem that way. And I wonder why that is. And Joyce asked good enough questions so that, you'd be able to like see like, okay, this is why that person is this way.
Yeah, I find that like when we don't ask people of that type, like if they resonate with the description of it, what will happen is that our descriptions turn into broken telephone. So we'll write something that is semi-accurate, but it's like somewhat like misrepresenting their experience as well. And it's not until we talk to people actually of that type that they can tell us like, we got this right, we got it wrong. Otherwise, it's like two adults, like when adults fight and then they assume something of the other, or like anyone when they fight, they're like, oh, this person, they meant this, and that's why they're a horrible person. But if you just talk to like your spouse or your friend or your enemy, I don't know who you're fighting with, and you ask them, like, why are you upset? And why did you say that to me? And that upset me. And they'll tell you the actual reason for why they did it. And so that's way more accurate than the assumption that we make in our head. Unless they're lying to us, but they're probably not, respecting that everyone says things in good faith.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I'm going to ask you in a bit, like, how did you get into type, all of that jazz and everything. But I think that one side comment that I wanted to make was that I feel like your, I want to say obsessiveness, but you know the word, I'm being picky, but for the sake of time, I'm searching for that exact word. But your willingness for exactitude, if you will, or accuracy and everything. I think that that's not only your TI, but it's also, from what I've been arguing, like your six, where from what I've read and everything, like sixes, especially like what I've read, like with me as a nine, my arrow movement to six, like I doubled down. Okay, like no, what are the facts? Like I need to know and everything. And when I was being profiled, like for those of you who don't know, my Enneagram profiling is I have a video on my channel called My Enneagram Journey Part 1, and literally like 45 minutes of my profiling session audio is in that. And one of the things that, the profiler said was, DZ, I don't hear any other NFJ talk about TI or accuracy or whatever as much as you do. And I think that that's your six coming out. Like, when you get especially like really like stressed out, and it's like, okay, no, what are the facts I need to know kind of thing. And I'm not a really big believer in tri-type, but when I sat down with Heidi and we tried to discuss what my tri-type was and everything at one point, then we came to like conclusion that it would be like somewhere along 926. And I was thinking 925. And it was hard actually. But what tipped the scale was that for a five, at least from like what Heidi was saying, like they're like more able to like, it's not that they're not accurate, but like they're more like concerned with what they believe to be right a lot of times, and they won't need as much validation from the external. They just have confidence in that. Whereas like with the six, it's like, okay, I know what I think is right, but I need to check in with what others think is right. I need to know, like, this is objective. Like, what are y'all's results getting? Like, what is that? And because again, like I have so much of that, then Heidi was like, yeah, I think that six would actually be like your tri-type. Again, that's something that I personally don't really believe too much in, but if I were to believe in it, then I'd most likely be a 926 based off of that. And so one thing that I've been like realizing, that six apparently has like a lot of that, like, they're also known as like one of the most intuitive, if not the most intuitive types, because they're like very heightened to these, things. And I see that a lot with Joyce. And so I feel like that she's been like, she's been dabbling with her type here and there. I know that you said that, nine is something that you've been thinking about, which I can see the nine, but I think that's arrow movement because you're like growing. Just like how I guess like for me, people see three. It's like, okay, well then that's good because that's supposed to be my development. So it's like awesome. But I think that at core, I could see more six for you. And then as opposed to like even one, where I don't really see like movement to four or, certain other things that, yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's really important to me to be like, not only have my perception, but to have it validated by the other person. Because I think that it's really easy to lie to yourself and to not ever know that, because I see people do it to themselves all the time. Like they can be hypocrites, and I'm like, I don't want to be like that. Like, I see it all the time. And I know that it's easy to spiral down confirmation bias, and like it feels right because you're confirming something that you thought of, but there's no basis.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess other types I've been entertaining in the past have been 1 and 4 too, and I realized it's because type sixes, they are known as responsible and trustable. And that sounds a bit like ones and their integrity. So it's easy for a six to see themselves in one because the integrity aspect can be seen in a six who is like very dutiful and responsible and trustworthy. And something that the six shares with the four is their ability to see harsh realities. So because but fours, they see it in emotions. So the harsh reality of the dark emotions, whereas a six sees the harsh reality of the truth, or like living, or like there's just something very untrustable about life, and that's why you have to prepare, or that like life is so easily like thrown off, and you can like have so many things go wrong, and everything you can lose in a blink of the eye. And like the thing is, like I notice red flags right off the bat. Like I meet a person and I already know the red
Wow.
flags that it contain.
Wow.
And so I can mistaken that for being a 4 because I see the dark depressingness of people. But the thing is, I create contingency plans, and I kind of prepare a lot because I foresee the red flags.
Yeah.
And but it's not with emotions like a 4, but it's with kind of preparing, because life can be dark, and you know that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that one of the biggest things, especially when it comes to Enneagram, is the core fears, like the core vices, not just like you have to look at the core vices, and then you also have to look at arrow line movement and all of that. And for a 4, it's like, okay, well, what's your relationship with envy? You know, like I personally, I thought that I was a 2 for like years. And I thought, you know, like, oh, you know, I'm a social 2, you know. So I was even already like aware of like the instinctual variance. And I was just like, okay, well, I guess I'm a social 2, which is similar to the social 9. And so that makes sense. But I never even considered 9 for myself. And then it wasn't until, you know, people started asking me questions like, or like starting to say like, no, you're not a 2, you're probably a 3. And I'm like, what? I'm not a 3, you know. But then I started like trying to be honest with myself. I started like looking into 3, and I'm like, I could see actually parts of myself here, you know. And what actually like tipped me was I didn't know about arrow movement. I knew about the instinctual variance, but I didn't know about like disintegration or integration. Although Beatrice Chestnut doesn't really like that because she believes that we have arrow movement to both in good and bad ways. And so but somebody said like, well, do you disintegrate to 8? And I was like, no, that I never act this way. And when they described arrow movement to 8, I was like, yeah, no, that's not me. And then they're like, yeah, then you can't be a 2. It's like, interesting. Well, then does this mean I'm like actually a 3? And so I started looking into 3, and you know, I'm trying to figure out like which of the subtypes I'm most related to. And I started thinking like maybe I'm self-preservation 3, but am I, what? Me? Self-preservation dominant? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't really see that. But it's the only one that I most relate to. Like, but even then, like, it's not really my core fear, whatever. So finally, I go get profiled. And one of the questions that she asked me was, do you ever feel unloved? And I was like, it's a good question. I actually don't remember a time feeling unloved. And I never asked myself that question. I never asked myself, like, oh, well, a 2, that's their main thing. Like, they feel unloved at times. I don't recall myself, like, I don't ever recall, like, feeling unloved. Instead, what I responded in that profiling session was, I just don't think that people love me in the right way. Or I said something along the lines of it, whereas, like, it was implying that, no, I believe that people love me, and I know that they do. But I feel like, I can go under the radar, I'm unseen, or they don't really like, they love the idea of me, but they don't really see me maybe, or whatever. And again, like by the end, she was like, Denzel, you're not a 2 or a 3, you're a 9. And you literally hear me go, huh. And I never looked into the 9, but then when I looked at the thing for 9, the vice, I was like, whoa, that's totally me. And then learned about countertypes, looked at the social 9 and everything. That's all me. Like, it's totally me. And Beatrice Chestnut was even talking about, like, how, it looks very similar to a 3. And it's like, well, then that makes sense, why I was getting confused for that. But all of that to say that it really does take a lot of, like, self-introspection and looking at what your core fear is. And I mean, I don't know, but Joyce, you don't seem like someone who envies a lot.
Yeah, I don't envy a lot.
Yeah.
But Here's the thing, like whenever an NFJ says anything, I relate to it, but probably not in the extreme 9 way that you said it, but I do relate to it just by the very fact that you're an NFJ. So you said that like people, they love you, but not in the right way. And I feel the same way. It's like they love me, but they don't love me for like actually me. Like they know like 0.01% of me, and they're loving that, you know, that sliver, but it's like, do they really love me if they're getting everything else wrong? But
Yeah.
it also, like, I guess it's also type 6 too, because I see everything as fundamentally untrustable. But maybe there is some truth in that, because I think if I met someone who was wholly trustable, I would trust them. And I do trust you, Denzel. Like the thing is, like with most things, almost everything, I go like, this is the reason why I can't trust it, and this is the specific area that I cannot trust it, and that things are fundamentally untrustable. Even with love, I see, like with my friends or something, like if they go like I love you, or like, well, I don't know, like if it was a romantic partner and they said I love you, or it's just some random person, I'd go like, do you really, like, do you know what that word means? And like I know so many couples who say that and then they fight and they break up or they get divorced, and I'm like, so 2 years from now, will you actually mean I love you?
I relate to that too. And I think again, like that NFJ plus 6-9 movement, like my core, I would say that I'm more liable to trust than you are. Like from what you said, I think that I'm a pretty trustworthy person. I wouldn't say I'm naive, but I'm definitely more naive than you are. Like I have like more hope in people in a way, kind of thing, and then it's like, oh man, they did that. That's so sad. And it's taken time to grow to come to more of a place where it's like, okay, I'm slower to trust people fully. If anything, I trust their intention. So like what you're saying about the I love you, it's like if somebody's telling me like, oh, I love you, like a lot of times I can think to myself, like I could believe them that they really do mean it, as in they really do believe that they love me. But then I'm like, I don't think that if we were to sit down and talk about what love really is, and at least to me, because you know love is an abstract concept and everything, and like define it and all of that, I feel like you probably be like, and back up a little bit. Like maybe I should be more careful with before I use that phrase, you know? And for me, I know like I won't use that phrase unless if I've thought through that, like for sure. Like, okay, no, I really do love this person, and this is why, and this is what it means to me, and I've checked in with myself, all of that. But again, that's not to say that I don't trust someone who says it. I will trust that they believe that for themselves, and they're not trying to deceive me. But I won't really trust that they love me until until I see that they really know what love means, and you know what it means to love me. Like, do you know how to love me properly? If you truly love me, then if I'm sending you these pages of a book that I related to and all of that, you would actually take the time to read it. You would actually like find interest in it. And there's been people who say like, oh, you know, I love you so much or whatever. And then here I am trying to share my thoughts and opinions or whatever with them. And they're like, oh man, that's such a long text message. Or, oh, you know, do you mind just summarizing? And it's just like, I choose my words very carefully, you know, and I craft in this way, and you don't understand like that, like me even presenting this to you is meaningful in a certain way. But you say that you love me. But okay, well, you probably do in your head, but I don't think that you do. So, and I'm sure that you could relate to that in a sense as well.
Yeah, Denzel, I relate to it because I'm an NFJ as well. I think maybe where it differs is that you might have like more optimism than I do. So the thing is, like type nines, like, in their description it says optimistic, and every time I see that, I'm like, well, I'm totally not a type 9, because like I think that I lean more towards like the cynical or pessimistic side. In my view, it's neutral. But to other people, I can bring up like harsh topics because I want to fully flesh it out. But some people, they aren't ready for it. It's too long for them to go over. And so sometimes I just present my FE side. I'm like, oh, well, most people don't want to listen anyway. So might as well just like be nice to them because that's the only side they'll accept. But deep down, I think like there's a cynic inside me. And I think it's particular because like when people, like I do believe people have good intentions when they say I love you. So I believe in the frame of reference where it comes from. Like I totally see that it's genuine, but I also see it as kind of like it's saddening to me because I see the long term what that word will actually mean to them in the future, and it means nothing, so it cheapens the word to me. And I'm like, so what does love mean to me? Because I don't want to cheapen it, because I don't want to then go back on my word. But I do believe it when the person says it, but it's almost like I am afraid that some words lose their meaning, or that things are used in a way that lose their meaning, and I just want to live my life to retain that meaning.
Yeah, I fully resonate with that. I think that I'm a very expressive person, and I like to express my words and everything. But I think that for me, I will only express it in like the way that I've described it to a friend recently was that I know people who have like waves, and then whatever like waves that they have at sea, they will ride that, and that'll be like like, oh, there's a wave. No matter how big, no matter how small, they'll take it and they'll use it as an opportunity to express, I love you so much, Joyce. And it's just like, oh, all I did was sign this paper or sign this receipt. I don't know, but cool. You know what I mean? And that's not bad because it's not like we shouldn't cheapen people's waves. But I know that for me, I can see a small wave and I'll be like, nah. Instead, I always wait for like tidal waves within me to like, really surface, and then I'll ride that out. And I think that that's why my expression can also be like intense. But I've realized because I want there to be like no doubt when I do express that, hey, whoa, this guy, like, wow, that's he really means it. Like, Jamila's always like making fun of me because she's like, Denzel, like when you tell people that you love them, it's like and then she like imitates me, like putting my hand like on their shoulder. It's like, hey, look at me, I love you, man. And it's like, that's really how it is, because it's like I want them to know like, hey, I'm not just, again, it's not to cheapen people who just say it, because I think that all waves are important, but for me, I will see those smaller waves at sea and I'm like, I could ride that, but I'm going to wait until a bigger one because I want that intensity. I want the person to like almost feel overwhelmed. Like, whoa, like, yeah, this person really means what they're saying. And again, I just want to really put out there that.
Yeah, I relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like I want everything I do to have intention. I don't want it to be just like willy-nilly. I want it to have intention, and I want people to know that there's intention behind that, and there's meaning behind that because it's intentional. And so that's why I thought I was a one, because like their core desire or something is integrity. And I was like, how I viewed the world was that like everyone else, like they don't care about maintaining that integrity, but I do. So it's like, well, I care about making sure love means something, or I care about like when I commit to something, I actually mean it. It's not like some willy-nilly like give up last moment. I'm like, I wanted to convey to people that I wasn't flaky with things that I intentionally put myself into. Mm-hmm. So it's like I thought I was the one because of that, but maybe it's just an NFJ thing.
Yeah, I think so. You actually, and I think I told you this, but you really remind me of INFJ and Pathos on Twitter.
I love her tweets.
Yeah, we're really close friends, and she's just awesome, and she's actually an INFJ 6 as well. And I feel like she would relate a lot to what you're saying, because she is similar in that she sees me as like the more optimistic version of her, where it's like, yeah, like, and I've put out videos about this too. It's like I can see, and maybe it's also like an extrovert thing for me too, but like it's like I can see how this friendship is probably not going to go the long term and everything, but I have the energy, and my tertiary SE is like, well, we won't know for sure unless if we like see it. Like, you know, my NI is like, I don't know. Like, I feel like that's not going to go long term. But then I guess like my tertiary SE is like, well, the only way to know for sure is if you play it out. The only way to know for sure is if you allow this to, you know, you allow the both of you to see it. You know, like I have an ESFP acquaintance of mine who, really long story short, but like she was upset because, you know, I pretty much like distanced myself from her, or not even necessarily distanced, but I wasn't giving her nearly as much energy as I used to, because now I've been, you know, having that whole plant analogy where I'm only watering seeds that are in my primary garden as frequently. And then with my excess water, because I'm only a limited source of energy, limited source of water, that's where I will, you know, go and give it to more on the outskirts and stuff like that. She's honestly just not in my primary garden. That's nothing bad. But, you know, I have a specific garden that I'm trying to tailor, I'm trying to grow. Well, she had gotten upset by that. And when I explained all of this to her, she wanted to take a stab at trying to get in the garden. I, in the back of my mind, knew that she didn't have what it takes to be in my primary garden. But, of course, I'm not going to say that to her. Instead, I tried to really treat it as if I believed that she could be in it. And she got Telegram app, you know, I told her, like, you know, like that's where I talk to my most close friends, whatever, and, you know, like all of that. And within a week, she just showed so much like inconsistency and trouble. And then finally she's like, wow, you know, this is actually like a lot of work. How about, you know, I don't mind being scaled down on your roster. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. We don't have to talk as frequently. We don't have to talk about these certain topics. You're forcing yourself, and it's not as natural. With my primary garden people, it's natural for them. But this has nothing bad to do with you. I will still check on you here and there. You know, we're still cool. If you see me on social media, feel free to comment. There's no bad blood, whatever. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, like I even though I knew that it wasn't going to work out, especially as an SE dominant on her part, I wanted her to see it for herself. But I also did my best not to pollute that process, because our confirmation biases can create self-fulfilling prophecies. So if I'm believing like this isn't going to last, this isn't going to last, well, now probably the reason why it's not going to last is because I'm putting in energy of doubt, and that's like transpiring and, you know, creating that thing. But if I put in an energy that's like, hey, this might actually work, this, and actually believe in it, then who knows what'll come from that. So it's almost like outwardly expressing to people like, I do believe in this, whatever, whatever, so that they can prove me wrong. And then in the back of my head, keeping a safe enough distance so that I'm not hurt if it does fall apart. It's like, a big part of me always knew this. And so I guess that is like where like my cynicism is still back there, but I allow my optimism to take charge. Whereas for empathos, we're like kind of like reversing. And I think that that's might be like the 9-6 thing. Do you relate to that? Like the
Yeah, I think that I knew this is on top of the expending energy. So I think, yeah, also because you're an extrovert, you're more okay with expending energy into relationships that ultimately won't work. But as an introvert, I find it like torture to like expend energy into relationships that don't work, because I know the outcome well enough, and my TI also doesn't want to bias the outcome too. I'm like, if it was meant to burn up in flames, then it'll already do that without me putting doubt into the relationship. So it's kind of like, I need to take away the doubt, because that's TI biasing how this whole thing will turn out. I don't want this to be a self-fulfilling prophecy and at my own hands. Like, I feel like if I have something in my mind, it's like blood on my hands. It's like, you know, in Shakespeare, it's like that phrase, you have blood on your hands. It's like when you contribute your negative thoughts into a situation, right, and then the result turns out negative, like you assumed, sometimes it is your own thoughts that influence your actions that caused that bad outcome, and you're the one with blood on your hands.
Right.
So I don't want blood on my hands, but at the same time, like, I feel so bittersweet towards a lot of things because I know that it doesn't have a good result. Like, I feel like most things in my life, they're satisficing. Like, I have one choice here and one choice here, and they both lead to outcomes I don't want. And I'm like, well, either one, like, it's going to make me suffer, or either one is one that I don't want. And I'm like, a lot of things in life are like this. And so people might wonder, like, why, like, when you get to know me, why am I so like depressing or like have this negative view? But it's almost like I'm weighing these outcomes in my mind, and I'm seeing the implication that strings along with it, that ripple effect, that domino effect. And it brings me to this dark place that I don't know how to convince myself out of.
Wow. Yeah, that's, man. Well, you're strong for dealing with that in that sense. And I think that, I mean, I guess just to like kind of reverse it back, because we are like, you know, usually this is a beginning question, but I do want to like make sure that we know about this. Like, how did you even get into type?
Oh, my ENFP best friend typed me against my will. So she made me take an online test, but what she said was, I don't care what you get on that. I already know your type. If you get something different, you don't know yourself. So it was like, I think it was a demonstration of her love. Like, she was like, I know you so well, more than you know yourself. And that shows how much I love you, because I know you so well. And so I took the test. I did get INFJ. And she's like, oh yeah, you are an INFJ. And I was still offended by her going like her whole speech on that. But it was like, okay, cool. There's something behind this. And like, there's a reality behind this. How did you know I was that type? And so what I did after that is I tried to prove her wrong. So I went through all 16 profiles, and I was like, well, I read it on Human Metrics, and I'm like, I read the ISFJ, and it was like the nurturer. And I'm like, well, I read this profile. I could fit into this, right? Just as much as the INFJ. And she told me, like, no, you're not a nurturer. Well, you are. Like, she agrees that I am nurturing. But she's like, Joyce, you're so abstract. Like, everything you talk about is just so vague. And it's so about, like, this bigger picture of reality. And I was like, oh, maybe that's why I haven't connected to anyone that deeply before, because whenever I introduce a big picture theme or idea, it's always shot down. And so I saw validity in MBTI because I was force typed. So someone was able to type me very quickly. And that impressed me, because I was like, well, if your eyes are perceiving that, then you're perceiving something real. So what is this thing? Second, cognitive functions made sense. So that was a convincing point to me. And 3, I tried really hard to argue myself out of INFJ, just because I'm so afraid of confirmation bias. So I go lengths to make sure I'm not confirming a bias inside myself. And it passed that test. So it also had validity there for me.
Wow.
That's my story.
Yeah, that's deep. So your ENFP friend already knew about cognitive functions at the time, right?
Yeah. And she typed everyone in our friend circle, and they were all sensors. And I realized that that's why whenever I talk about like this idea that is like so zoomed out, like no one follows me, I feel like I'm always walking on a path alone. And I'm like, guys, join me on this path of thought. And then no one's joining me. And I'm like, why? Does everyone have like distaste against me? Like, what is causing this? Like, and I'm like, oh, that's why. It's just that they don't follow because it's not of interest or something.
Did you experience that in your family too? Like, I don't think I know your family's types.
Yeah, my mom is an ESFP. My dad is a ISTJ. My brother is an ESTP. And they all see me as like the black sheep. I just want to belong, man. Like, why are they making it so hard for me to belong? Just because I can't see stuff, I miss stuff. Okay. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like there's a certain thing that's like it can feel kind of like, okay, I don't want to compare it to this because it's a huge issue, but it's almost like it feels like a certain type of marginalization. Like, I feel like my whole life I've been marginalized in a certain way, but I never knew where it came from. And I'm like, I never did anything wrong. Why is everyone treating me this way? And so, you know, with my family, with my friend group, except my ENFP adores the living hell out of, I'm so sorry. Like, she adores me. And I'm like, so what causes this, like, love-hate relationship with me? And so it was affecting my self-esteem too. I was like, do people just like like I'm like a skunk. Like I spray out of my like ass like this really bad smell, and then it distracts people. But I realized it wasn't because of that. It was because I just thought differently than everyone else. And when I would say something that interests me or intrigues me that I care about, it was never received. That bid was never received because they just fundamentally thought differently than me, and I didn't have to see myself as skunk spray, you know, because I saw my existence as skunk spray.
Wow. I really relate to that too. I feel like that's a big reason as to why my coping mechanism became like 9-ish. Like I shared this thing called sandboxes a few years ago, where pretty much the essence of what I wrote was that I always choose to go into somebody else's sandbox instead of introducing them to my own, because I have this inherent fear of boring people. Not that people will bore me, but that I will bore them. And so instead, it's like, okay, I'm always going to enjoy what you're talking about more than you might enjoy what I'm talking about more. And I see this even a lot still today, but thankfully, like, you know, I've been building friends in the community and stuff with people who actually, again, are actually interested in things that I have to say. And YouTube is also a really great place. Like I originally came on to here just to like speak about things. Like one of my first videos is called Confidence versus Conceit, where literally we were just reading this book in class and they presented that concept. And I just started thinking about it and I was like, man, I just want to talk about this, but I don't really know who to talk about it with. Oh, let me just throw it on YouTube, you know? So I just went on YouTube and it's still there now. And it's just me like talking about like, yeah, confidence versus conceit. And in the book, you know, Griffin said this and yada, yada, yada. But when I'm thinking about like that and I'm just talking, like just free flow talking. And people started to comment like, hey, we really like this. And I just kept on doing more of that. And now even on Twitter, I just, you know, you'd see me, like, I just like, you know, say my thoughts about things. Whereas in real life, like I know that most people, they're like, I have like, yeah, I have people in my life, a lot of people, even relatives and stuff, who they like laugh at me when it's just like, oh, okay, here goes like Denzel's thing again. Like watching like The Incredibles 2, for example, I went with a whole bunch of family, and when we were driving back home, I was speaking to the driver. He was an ESFP. I was like, man, that was a really good movie. And he's like, yeah, it was. And I was like, and I presented some, I don't even remember what the question was. But I was like, don't you find it interesting how yada, yada, yada? Like I said something, and then he was like, I mean, no, not really. I didn't think about that. You know, I just go to watch a movie to enjoy it. And like, and he was like mocking me. And I immediately was like, all right, okay, you know? And so, but then I knew that, you know, if I was to bring this type of thing up to like people on my channel, people like you, whoever, it would become like this flow of conversation. And so, yeah, I really definitely understand that. And that type of messaging can really like make people like feel some type of way, you know, like, because then you start to think of yourself as worthless or valuable, stuff like that. Would you say that like now, like how do you, you know, how's that like for you right now? Like, because you've met new people, but, you know, would you say that you have way more satisfying relationships and you're actually content? Or is it like, I mean, you know, yeah, it's better, but, you know, it could be better? Or it's like, no, it's actually the same area? Or do you feel comfortable sharing?
Like sometimes I lay on my bed and I'm like, well, like this is the first time I've ever felt like I've been appreciated by my friend group. Like I just go like, wow, you know, like sometimes, you know, when you just sit back and you relax and you zoom out and you're like, wow, you know, this is like the first time I've ever felt like people have cared about what I've had to say, or that, you know, I have friends who genuinely care about me and that they're grateful for me and that they actually can follow my conversation and I don't feel like malnourished around them. So something I say is like, sometimes when I talk to people, I sometimes feel malnourished. Like we'll have a conversation that goes nowhere, and that like I'll do it for their sake because I know they really care about it. But inside, I'm kind of dying inside. I'm like, this conversation sucks. And I'm like, well, I try to, and then sometimes I'll try to ask like a deeply personal question to try to like turn into something that I'll like. And then I'm like, so I always have to like nourish myself by taking the conversation in a path that I would be satisfied by. But with my friends, they nourish me naturally, and I've never had that. And yeah, Denzel, you also do that for me, where you nourish me naturally. So like, thank you for that.
Yeah, talking to you is always exciting. Even whether it's us actually like, engaging in good discussion here, or back at Profiler training when I was like doing a lot of shock humor to
Like mess with me in real life.
everyone messes with you in real life.
Yeah.
It's just so easy, Joyce, but it's what's the word? It's endearing. I liked it. I think that it's fun.
I'm a source of entertainment for people because my reaction is just they cannot pass out on it, so they have to tease
me. See, so there's no way that you're boring. How could you ever think that about yourself? But yeah, seriously though, I really relate to that. And I think that that's because once you start dealing with these types of things long enough, you really do start getting strategies for it. Like when it comes to small talk, I'm, especially as an FE dominant, like I always want people to feel, whatever. Like even when it came to that whole thing with the ESFP acquaintance, because of her, like I knew in the back of my mind that this is not going to go long term. But like you said, I had the excess energy to allow her to see it for herself. Whereas maybe someone else would be okay with like, hey, I know that she's probably going to get upset because I just won't allow this or whatever. And she's just not trusting that I know it's not going to work out. I like for people to be able to see things themselves. And I try not to say, told you so. But, it's like I knew myself, this wasn't going to work out or whatever. But in that sense, because I like for people to see things for themselves, then when it comes to like small talk, for example, what I found is that if somebody's like, I don't know, like the easiest go-to question is like, oh, so, nice weather that we have today or whatever. And it's like, I've literally witnessed relatives, same relatives that would make fun of me because of the stuff that I bring up. I've literally witnessed them have conversations about the weather. And I did not know that people could actually do that. I always thought that was an exaggerated form of thing. It was like, no, like oh yeah, I think it's going to go, yeah, the rain. Just like, are we seriously still talking about how it's about to rain? Like, are we serious? And so for me, when that comes to my direction, because of me being FE Dom and wanting people to see things for themselves, I try to like have like a win-win. Whereas I'll indulge. You ask me like, oh, how's the weather? Like, or, like, oh, nice weather. Like, yeah, it really is nice weather. I really like how warm it is. I'll say something surface like that or whatever. And then I'll be like, hey, what's your favorite season? It's like, well, I like fall. It's like, oh, why is that? Oh, I don't know. I think I just like this and that. Okay. It's like, and then usually, if they're a kind human being, they will ask me what mine is. It's like, oh, well, I really like this. I like spring because it symbolizes, growth, and it symbolizes this. And from there, I can start gearing the conversation to a more abstract, a more personal place. And from there, the person will either get excited and start tracking with me, or they'll be like, okay, I don't really feel like talking to this person anymore because I didn't really want to think during this conversation. So then they'll do me a favor and they'll cut the conversation short, and then I don't have to be the bad guy. Do you ever like find yourself like doing that in any way?
Yeah, I totally do that. Yeah. So I'll try to do the win-win. I'm like, okay, we'll talk about the weather for now, and then I'll bring it up a notch and then up a notch to see if they'll track with me. If not, they'll normally like show that they're disengaged. So I'm doing both of us a favor by ending the conversation.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but Denzel, I related so much to your sandbox analogy or metaphor because when you posted that on Twitter, I was like, could I be a 9? But I
Uh-huh.
think it's like maybe an NFJ thing too,
Mhm.
because all my life I've felt like I'm kind of boring to people.
Mhm.
Not because I am, because when I like talk to you or I talk to Heidi Parib, like you'll go like, I love talking to you, and she'll go like, wow, and I'll go like, I never get this reaction in real life. It's normally like they'll go like, so the shade of this leaf, Joyce, can you tell me like the indents in it and like how is it more of an oval or a circle? And I'm like, please kill me now.
No, I feel that.
Yeah, like when people like wonder about type and it like, is it real? Like just see my family. Like look at my mom talk about a cat's paw and how it's so cutely and moistly shaped and how like when you press it, it feels like a certain thing. And I'm like, well, look at how long she can talk about that too. Okay, like you track it, it'll be like 1 to 3 hours of the same like sensory stuff. It'll be like, now it's the fur of the cat, like it feels very smooth, and I'm like, how far can you go into this and how long can you talk about this? I'm like, I thought this was like not a thing until I saw it in real life. So I'm
Yeah.
like, at the very least, I'm saying that type is real, but at the very least, it is a spectrum where it's like sensing to intuition, but I do believe that it is a thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that yeah, it doesn't like that sandbox thing is really just it's a real big thing for me. Like I didn't even know that I was a 9 back then when I had written it. Back then I just wrote it just because, like that's how I've always felt. As I just started tweeting it and I was like, oh, maybe I should like save this in my notes because I was just venting like, hey, this is how I often feel. Then I learned about the 9. It's like, whoa. That I like, and then I look at older videos and everything that I've been saying in older videos. It's like here's literally proof of me being a core 9 because I'm talking everything that I'm talking about in these videos having to do with the 9's core narcotizing and all of that. But yeah, like I really have felt like the same way oftentimes because just so frequently, and I think I had mentioned this on your channel. Like I I don't I don't consider myself someone who likes to talk. Like one time Jamila and I were having like a little playful debate or whatever, and she like passively had said like, yeah, because you like talking, and me being pedantic as I often am, it's like, mm. She's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'd say I like talking. She's like, are you serious, Denzel? I was like, no. What I'd say is I like conversing because and again, I know that this could be like pedantic and like whatever, but if I'm with people who I feel aren't valuing the things that I'm saying, who won't care for the things that I'm saying, I am not going to talk. Like that's point blank period. And I'm not killing myself trying to keep quiet. I don't, even if you're gonna try to get me to, I don't want to, because I know that it's not going to be meaningful to you. I know that it's not going to go like that's a waste of expended energy. However, if I know that what I'm saying is going to be received well and that it's going to like the person is actually interested in all of that, well, yeah, of course I can talk. But when I think of like someone who likes to talk, I think of like babies. Who they don't care whether you're listening to them or not. They're just like, wow, look at this cool thing that I now know how to do. So they're just like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. They're just talking. They can be by themselves, playing around, not even knowing that people are like around, and they're just talking incessantly. And then there's even adults who do that, who may even be introverts. Like I have an ISTJ mother-in-law who, she's an introvert, but like she talks. And my ISFJ mom, she's actually a quiet person, but I would say that she likes to talk because she'll just be in the car at times and she's like, yeah, and it's just like nobody's really listening to her, but she's just musing. But for me, if it's not if it's not me bowling and hitting pins, like everything that I'm saying is with intention. I don't just talk to talk. There's purpose behind everything that I'm saying. And so that's why it's like, no, I like discussing. I like conversing. I like connecting. But talking, not really. And so when it came down to, being boring to certain people or whatever, it's like, you know what? I will join you in your sandbox because, especially back then, it's like, well, I still want to connect with people, FE. So it's like, even if, it's not up to par with what I want, I'm going to, like, this is the best that I can get. So I'm going to, try to indulge in what you want, and, like, just kind of like put my desires and stuff to sleep and everything as often as I can. And now I'm so grateful that I'm meeting more and more people where I can serve in that same manner, but we actually happen to align. Like, oh, I'm not just, trying to engage in your, like, whatever you're interested in to talk about just because I want to connect, but I'm actually really interested in it just as much as you're interested in whatever I have to talk about. And it's a really like reciprocal type of dynamic. And it's so different growing up because, you have so many people who like, they just don't value what you have to say. They're just like, oh, they're the person goes again, kind of thing.
Yeah, I relate to bowling and having the intention of hitting pins. It's like I want to strike. It's like I'm not bowling, so it'll hit nothing. Like I'm not intentionally doing gutter balls. But even like a gutter ball, it kind of implies that you have an intention and it's of screwing up. But so like with me, it's intentional bowling.
Yeah.
So I agree. So it's kind of like it feels like pointless when people talk about things like, the weather, because then I'm like, well, my goal is to do intentional bowling, but then you want to talk about this pointless thing, and now I cannot bowl.
Yeah, exactly. I see that as like, first analogy that comes to mind is maybe like a yo-yo or something. Like you're just doing it to do it. You just like seeing what you can do with it. And it's like, all right, that's cool. Like I literally know people who like talking for talking's sake. They just like the idea of like these same people that I was talking about, like how they can talk about the weather for so long and they tease me for the things that I bring up. Like literally, Joyce, they will make faces like, oh, here he goes again with this. And it's like, what? But like these same people, like you'll see them, like we'll all be at a dinner table or something, and they just love like maybe like dressing fancy or something, having people around them, and then like sipping and doing the and they're acting like they're talking about something very like elegant and elite, when it's like you guys aren't talking about anything, But they just like the feel of conversation. They just like that, and it's a yo-yo in a way. They just those people that will just talk to you just cause, whereas like for me it's like if I'm not actually aiming at pins, I'm not picking up a bowling ball. Period. I'm just gonna chill, and I don't have a problem with doing that. I really don't have a problem with like sitting down and just being quiet if I feel like I have nothing to say. If I don't have anything to say, if I don't have any intention, then no, I'm good. But I like what you said about the gutter ball too, because it's like even if you totally miss, there was still intention behind it. There's you having a gutter ball that you may have just like miscalibrated versus yo-yoing or like throwing a ball, like throwing a ping pong ball or like baseball. Like there's a difference in also like playing catch with someone versus just throwing a baseball up and down. And that might be fun for some people, and and I don't, that's it. I'm not here to like judge anyone, but that's just like not my style.
Yeah, and like with the gutter ball, it's useful because at least that it leads to a dead end. So it's kind of like people like to say the elephant analogy where you need to feel out the elephant. Like to know what the elephant is, you also need to know what it's not. So the gutter ball allows you to calibrate. Like this definitely isn't the elephant. Well, at least I know that it led me down there. Yeah. So it had some sort of ideational usefulness to get you closer to feeling out the elephant.
For sure. For sure. I wanted to prime 2 more questions to you.
For sure.
Wrap up. So the first one is where where do you see your channel going? Like, what is your ideal? Like, I know that when we had planned our video, it was months in advance. Like on your channel, I was like, wow, like, you know, and from then I've always like wondered, like, I wonder how far in advance like Joyce planned these videos, like, you know, whereas like with this one, I just hit you up like 2 days ago. I'm like, hey Joyce, I want to put you on my channel. And so like, do you have some time? Like, let's make this happen. So I like you being such a long-term planner in that sense as well.
Yeah.
Do you have like what is your vision for your channel right now?
Yeah, I set the dominoes in just the right place, so I try to plan in accordance to that.
For sure.
And I guess my long-term aim for my channel is I'm starting a website. It's going to be called Dynamic Archetypes,
Mm,
and it's basically like my nuanced take on type with my friends who
mhm.
want to join as well. And I'm also creating a model off of that. So basically, I see type as there's a lot of species. You know, there's OP, there's traditional Jungian, there's personality hacker, there's every other brand imaginable too. And
Right.
I was wondering, it's kind of like different denominations of Christianity. So
Mhm.
it's like, yeah, you know, you have this dominant denomination and this denomination, but
Right.
ultimately there's one God, okay? So it's either like one of your denominations are right or none of them are right, or they're right in different places. And I'm
Yeah.
like, there's no 1,000 gods, okay? Like you can't all exist, okay? So it has to be like some truth to this.
Yeah.
So my goal with, you know, I'm going to try to like create a model where you get to see my version of combining these systems or taking out what I like from these systems or, you know, saying what's good or bad about these systems. But I ultimately believe that, you know, there are multiple denominations, but what is the God? I mean, like in the sense, like, you know, it's the metaphor, like
Yeah.
it has
For
to be
sure.
something underlying it that's true. And so I want to discover that, and I want to spend the rest of my life discovering that. And what I'm planning to do is I want to get like my PhD too, and then what I want to do is do something to contribute to the field. I don't know what yet, but in as long as the vision's there, I'll figure it out. The details will fill themselves out in.
Sure.
And another goal I have is with the website, I know like a lot of extroverted intuition users, they have very wild ideas that are very brilliant and genius, but they never write it down. And I'm like, so you connect MBTI to all these theories, but you never put it somewhere, and it always just evaporates like you know, like liquid turning to gas, and it just goes away. And I'm like, so what if I got a lot of any users into one place, and I got them to contribute all their thoughts towards MBTI, and so we could see it through every other theory. But you know, chakras, how does that link back to MBTI? And like, what are the correlations? Is there an exact correlation? Is there not? And we're going to have that laid down. So that's one of my side goals. My
Wow.
second goal is I want to create an MBTI test that is as accurate as it can be. I know that, like, okay, so the official MBTI, it's IT. It's way better than 16 personalities, incomparable to 16 personalities, but it has like room to go off of. I think the statistics for the MBTI, assuming that they even check the people correctly, is that 90% of people get 3 letters correctly when taking the official MBTI, and 75% of people get all 4 letters correctly when taking the official MBTI. So what I want to do is, like, I don't have corporate interests. Like, I don't want to make money. Like, I don't want to make money from this. I don't want to be like this
So
huge,
that's not your goal.
like, I guess like it's not my goal. Maybe making money would be pleasant along the way. You know, I don't want to be a broke, starving artist.
Yeah.
But I'm not primarily fueled by that. And like
Right.
what fuels me is data accuracy, integrity, and just my love of typology. And I think that might cause me to create a better test than the official MBTI. But I love the official MBTI. Don't sue me, official MBTI.
Yeah.
My 6 is coming. I'm like, oh no, I should not speak poorly about the MBTI. But I'm like, so that's my goal, to create a refined test. Any project connecting everything to MBTI and something to do with PhD. And also, I want to say something, Denzel. We talked about bowling, and I realized that when people, like you said, when they make you pick up, like they don't make you pick up the ball or something, I kind of get resentful. I'm like, so we're not doing intentional bowling. So now part of my brain feels resistant to this. if not resentful, I am slightly resistant. Like I want to bowl, man. I want to do some intentional bowling, or
Yes.
else I am resistant. And that's like proof to me a typology exists too. Because why would I be feeling that resistance if that cognitive function didn't exist, if
Yeah.
this types didn't exist?
Yeah. Wow. That was really, really, really well put. Because yeah, that's exactly like how I feel. Like you're gonna be pulling teeth again. You could think that I'm quote unquote talkative, but if I don't feel like there's intentional bullying being done, like right now, I'm energetic, whatever, because we are talking about topics that I can be very certain that you're interested in and that I'm interested in. And so it's like great. So I actually feel this isn't like depleting energy for me. But of course, if I'm engaged in something that I don't feel is fulfilling, and then if I try to gear it towards something that's fulfilling for me, and then you're like, then of course, like it's going to be pulling teeth for you trying to get me to talk more, because I'm looking at the bowling ball. I'm like, why would I pick that up just to toss it up and down in the air? Like like maybe even something could be said that you're tossing up and down in the air a baseball. But for me, I'm tossing up in the air a bowling ball. Like I want to intentionally strike. Like I don't know. Like, but yeah, I agree with that. And I
Yeah,
definitely show resistance in those instances as well.
yeah, it's like you have a cognitive magnetism towards wanting that intentional strike. And it's like without honoring your cognitive magnetism, you feel psychologically starved, or like almost like your wiring keeps reminding you that you want to do it. So you can't let go of that need. So that magnetism drives you. And it's kind of like, because you cannot change what you're magnetized to it, you might as well like find the best ways to cope with having already this magnetism.
Yes.
And that's what type helps us learn. It's like sometimes if you have that base, like that you love intentional bowling, it's to not like reject that tendency within you, but to cultivate a life that supports that as well as you can, because you can never get rid of it. So you might as well work with it to the best of your abilities and create that win-win for you and for that other person.
Yes, exactly. I also wanted to commend like your goals for your channel and like just your goals in general, because seriously, you have everything calibrated so well. Like you have all of the skills and ingredients necessary for you to be able to create exactly like what you're aiming for. This invention that you're trying to have, like you have the best parts that are necessary for it is what you already have there, like the heart that you have for typology and accuracy and being able to connect with people so that you can like, I've always said that when I've coached INFJs, I've always encouraged them to interact with more people. Like I think that there's so many INFJs who take pride in their introversion, and it's like that's not good, right? You're supposed to be developing your auxiliary FE, because that's what's going to really give your NI a bigger range of perspectives to take in. And then when you start sharing these perspectives and these insights on humanity and everything, then your TI is also more calibrated and everything. And your SE is engaged because you're getting real life tangible stuff. And so from extroverting and then having that introverted time and everything, you are best calibrated. But a lot of INFJs I know, like they really like are resistant towards that, which I guess a lot of people tend to be with their auxiliary function, but you do such a great job with it. Like I know that even at profiler training, like people were saying like, no, you must be an ENFJ. Like where for me, like I'm like, nah. Like I'm like, nah, I can definitely see that you're an introvert, but I love how well that you tap into that auxiliary FE and you're using it in a very intentional bowling manner to not only get to know people for who they are as individuals, of course, but then also taking that and then bringing it to a bigger picture that'll be able to help humanity in itself. And I just want to say, like, I'm really looking forward to what you're going to be doing, and I really commend you for that vision. I didn't know that was like all of what you were building towards, but wow, I'm great that I'm even like a part of this in some way. That's awesome.
Yeah. You're definitely going to be like helping with this vision along the way, and I'll be inviting you back to socialize with me and to improve my FE through that socialization. But like I wanted to say a few things. Another one of the reasons why I created this channel, was because before it's all over, like I don't want to never open up to anyone. So I know I have this tendency of just not communicating myself, and that a lot of ideas just go unheard because I just don't talk. My issue is just not talking. And so I'm like, at the end of the day, before it's all over, like, would you be okay with dying like this? And I'm like, oh no, I'm not. And then so what happened is like, I want to be open. I want to be an open book to people. But the thing is, I don't know how to get over my privateness. Like, I just don't know how to. So like Type Talks is like a strategic way for me to get over my privateness, because I know no other way that my brain can find it like okay to share with people unless it's in this type of setting that it helps other people. Because if it doesn't help other people and I have no reason to share, sometimes I just don't talk. And I'm like, that is a serious chronic issue I have.
Yeah, even as an extrovert, I fully relate to that. And I think that's why everything I do, everything I tweet, everything I say, everything's intentional. I try to make it beneficial in one way, shape, or form. Even when I'm joking around, all of that has like intention behind it, because like, oh, this might ease the mood, which might allow someone to feel more comfortable to share what's going on with this, or like whatever might happen over there. And so, yeah, I fully agree, because then, like, what's the point of just like incessantly speaking once again? So I'm really glad that you're doing this. And I think actually like my last question before I will then ask you, where can people find you, how and follow you, all of that. So like be ready for that. My last question is, you do on your channel like have like interviews, like that makes up like most, if not all, of your videos. What would you say are like, do you plan on also making videos of just you where you're sharing your opinion, like how you were just saying? Or is it something that's like, no, I'm more of like throwing it out there as I have discord or discourse with people?
I will definitely make my own videos. I'm just a shy little being, and when I'm able to like incrementally get over my shy penguin, shy beanness, I will make videos alone. And also it's a TI thing too. I'm like, what is the best way, most accurate way I can say this? And it's giving me paralysis too, because I don't want to like spread misinformation. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this for sure. I'm definitely gonna make solo videos, but it's when I got my shit together, like both my shyness together, and so I can just go like, do you know like this, there's this meme where there's your comfort zone. There's this guy running to hit this button over here, and he's like, boop, and then he runs back into his comfort zone. It's like, I did it. I hit the button. That's me, like with solo videos. I'm like, when I'm ready, I'll just run out of my comfort zone, hit that button, and then run back. And then I'll just keep doing that to do solo videos.
Wow, that's good. That's good. You're really setting up like a good little obstacle course of some sort to like, it's like, okay, no, I'm going to get to that point soon. But right now I'm just lifting these weights, and that is like the long-term mission that I have. But that's awesome, because I love the interviews that you're doing, but also another reason why I wanted to make you the person who is being interviewed, because I really want to give you that opportunity to like share things and everything. And so after you answer this, then you should also tell us like where we can find you and everything. But I want, like, going off of that, what would you say is, and I don't know, maybe you might have to think about it for this, but like, what would you say is like a big grand piece of advice that you'd want to give to anybody who's like watching, like something that, like this, me as Joyce, like this is something that I've learned and I really would like to leave with you. Like, how like personality hackers thing, they're always saying like, if there's one soundbite that we want you to take from us, is develop that co-pilot, develop that auxiliary. What is yours?
There's this tweet that says, find people who speak your language so you don't have to spend the rest of your life translating your soul. And I find that very true, is that like typology gives us a language so that we can talk to people about our soul so we don't have to translate ourselves. And that it's very taxing on your energy to keep, trying to go an uphill battle and to translate yourself. But if you're able to find a language in which to talk about yourself and the other person can understand your language, you find a place where you can call home. And it's all about like finding a place that feels like home to you, or else you will feel like mentally and psychologically starved. You'll feel psychologically unsafe, or you'll feel boring, or your self-concept will take a hit. So I place an importance, like whatever helps you feel at home in yourself, in the world, in your mind, like always go towards what feels like home. That is your North Star. And so if you know that it is your North Star and that these people that you talk to feel like lifelong friends, Denzel, I would like to be a lifelong friend of yours too. That would be great. But it's all about like cultivating Denzel calls it a garden. I guess here I'm calling it a home. But it's like cultivating a home that you can live with, because at the end of the day, like your life is so finite. You only have so much energy. You might as well put it into things that make you feel happy, fulfilled, and give you a reason to be alive. So yeah, thank you for being one of those people who cultivate a place that feel like home for me, Denzel. And that is my advice for people.
That's really, really beautiful. That's an awesome soundbite, Joyce. I really, yeah, and it's my pleasure. This was not anything like pulling teeth for me. Like I told you, I don't watch your videos just to like, oh, Joyce posted another one. I gotta make sure to like. I genuinely enjoy your content, and again, those of you who are watching, like, I want you to go and subscribe. I want you to watch Joyce's videos. And she has my stamp. I approve of her stuff. I always feel like, like if me and you agree on someone's type, then it's like, okay, then it has to be right. Because like we're just so heavy on like the accuracy and all of this. And we don't have like, at least in my opinion, like an ego problem.
Yeah.
Where, like, like I don't want to be defensive. Like if you come and you tell me like, actually, Denzel, I think that this person, I'm not going to be like, oh, you don't know better. Like I'm going to be like, oh, really? Like, why do you think that? And I like, I want us to come on the same page. And so, yeah, I love watching your videos just because I just generally love watching them. And I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to like sit you on my channel and share it with all of my subscribers. So y'all go and subscribe to Joyce, support her. And where can they find you?
They can find me on my channel. It is Joyce Meng, so it's my name right over here. And so you can also find me on Dynamic Archetypes when it's launched. And yeah, Denzel, I just love speaking to you. Let me tell you one of my 6 tricks. So yeah, I think that when we both land on a type, I think that we're probably correct, because I really trust your typing skills, Denzel. And also, I know that we're not biasing each other because we have different friend groups too. And I try to like, okay, my secret to all of you guys, this is what I do, is that, double blinds, right? So like when you type someone separately than someone else, right? It's what Dave and Shan do, right? I do that with everyone I know. So I like to type people with as many people as I can find from as many different type ideologies as I can find, so that I'm not biasing myself with a system or with a person, because I know that's so easy to fall into that, or I'm just 6 paranoid, So what I do is I'm very polygamous with with double blind testing, with figuring out people's types. And when there's a smidge of doubt, what I do is I have runner-up types. What me and Denzel do is the reason why I trust you, Denzel, too, is because like when you're not sure of a person's type, you have a runner-up type. So this is the 2nd most likely or the 3rd most likely. And I do that too. So I'm like, if this person isn't an INTJ, they would be an ISFP. And I
Right.
keep that in mind just in case I'm lying to myself. So I do that with everything, and I'm like, I trust you because you do that too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I'm so doubtful about everything, but it helps me keep things accurate.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's really validating. And I think that we're able to cover each other's bases a lot better as a team when we're doing that. And it
Yeah.
helps a lot with that vision that you have because, and then again, we're giving good information. I feel like that's very FETI thing. Like, sure, we may value FE more, but again, don't sleep on the TI. That information, we want everybody to be on the same page with the information. That's what's going to create that harmony.
Yeah.
So if we can calibrate that information properly, then we'll have proper harmony.
Yeah.
The way that we're viewing things, and then you being able to understand the differences between like certain systems, like now that whole Socionics versus Myers-Briggs debate and everything, where I used to be so stressed, like, why the heck are we like not understanding this? And now it's like, oh, it's just a different system. That's what I had to understand from here on out. That's why I'm an I'm IEE in that, but then ENFJ and Myers-Briggs, but then Megan Lavoda is an EIE and ENFJ, and then there's Alana who's this and whatever. And so all of this being able to understand and then hold space for it, that all really like very much helps.
Absolutely. I feel like lower down TI, like with EJs and IJs who have TI lower down, sometimes they have this thing where they are insecure about their TI, but it's great because it makes them double check their TI times 10.
Yes.
And so they're like constantly doubting because they're insecure about it, which is both a downfall and a strength.
Yep. Yeah. That's exactly what it's like for me. That's exactly what it's like. But Joyce, thanks again for taking the time to talk to me, opening up, allowing me to interview you and everything. I feel like this is going to be something that, if it isn't right now, is like this type of interview is going to like blow up, especially like when your business comes in. It's like, whoa, she is an NI Dom. She prophesied this. She worked for it. Like, like I really believe that you're continuing to bring more and more value to the world, and also you becoming more valuable to the world in that same aspect. And it's an honor, like, not to like be overly sappy, but like it's an honor to like feature you on my channel and then have you discuss these ideas and everything. So thanks again. And everyone, go ahead and subscribe once more, and done.